Hello, everyone. This is Lynn St. Germain with the Canadian Real Estate Association, and this is Web Forms for Beginners for the members of the Saskatchewan Realtors Association. So in today's class, what we're going to take a look at it, first of all, is exploring your member dashboard, as this is the first area you're going to come upon when you first enter Web Forms. And what I would really like to do today is to help you create a workflow. So what is the most efficient way that you can work in order to make the creation of your transactions quicker and much more efficient? And the best way to do that is to work with transaction templates. So we're going to be creating a template today. Then we're going to be creating a transaction using the 5-step wizard. The wizard is a tool that will help guide you throughout the process of creating that basic transaction. And then, of course, we're going to be looking at personal clauses. It's a really important element within Web Forms because in the most cases, you do have to either create your own clauses or you have to customize one that has been provided by you to you from your brokerage, perhaps, or your board. So we're going to go, of course, into the details here and all of these items. And in terms of member support, you can always reach us at support@CREA.ca or our toll-free number. And we also have extended hours now, 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to midnight Eastern time for Web Forms support. So let's do a little switch here to the live environment. Okay, so this area that you see here, of course, is your member dashboard. It's the first page you're going to see when you first arrive on Web Forms. So these boxes are referred to as widgets. So widgets are shortcuts to either features, tools, or your actual transaction. So in order to customize this area, if you look on the top right-hand side, you can open up the lock and it will give you a menu of these widgets. So the first ones that you see on the left, or the blue ones, are essentially tools of the different things that you want to have access to. By default, you can have here, of course, create transaction. I would definitely encourage to have the create template one. You can also either drag the e-signature one down here. You may have to do a little bit of moving around here. And to the right side of your screen, you have the green ones. So the green ones refer to widgets that comprised, like in this case here, all your transactions. So you can quickly have access to your existing transaction. And this area here is completely adaptable in terms of sizes as well, those widgets. So if I wanted to drag another one in place here, I can just move and just to do a little bit of adjustment to make things a little bit more cohesive. But again, you can add as little or as much widgets as you want. As you're getting more comfortable with all of these features, you may come back to change things again. In the meantime, make sure to lock it back up so you don't move things around by mistake. And then you'll be able to go back at any time. So let's move to the left-hand side of your screen and open up the left sidebar. So we're going to take a look at some of these tools that are offered here. So keep in mind that this menu will always be open to you anytime you are in Web Forms. So regardless of where you are, it's always going to be open. It may look like this because sometimes it will just close up in order to give you a more working space. But until you get comfortable with the icons, then you can always open it up just to make sure that you're going to the right tool. So the first one, of course, is the dashboard. So again, wherever you are, you can always go back to this member dashboard by choosing the first option. The transaction area is where also all of your transactions are going to be created and listed as you're starting to create them. So right here on the top here, you have all the different filters that you can add in order to start sorting. So once you start having a lot of transactions, you may want to maybe change which one you're specifically looking for. And we're going to look at statuses a little bit later on in the class, and then apply. So we'll choose. We'll make a search on these different filters later on. And right here to the right, of course, in order to start creating a transaction, You can do it from the dashboard. I like to work from my dashboard. You can start doing it from here as well. It's exactly the same feature. So regardless whether that transaction is started from here or from the dashboard, you're still going to have access to that same transaction. So we're not going to do right now, but right next to it is an icon that looks like a basket. So the basket is also going to be coming together with the plus sign in a lot of areas, because the basket is being used when you're adding multiple items. In this case here, it would be transactions. For example, if I needed to delete let's take some of these older test transactions here. As I selecting them, they are going into the basket right here. And then I can just simply delete them. So these options, of course, will be different as well in other areas of the application. So we'll get back to that later on. But again, you can start creating a transaction from here as well. All right, so moving along here. So Authentic Sign, this is simply my electronic signature that is already linked in, but we'll talk about that in further details. So the forms, of course, here, this is where you have access to your provincial forms. Some of the COVID forms that also have been added, of course, in the last couple of years. And then you have all the FinTrack forms. This one here is the French version of FinTrack. So if you can also peruse through the folder. And what I would recommend that you do is always check these menu items. So these three dots here means it's a menu option. So you can also check them out and see what these menu options offer, because again, they will vary depending on where you are in the application. So you can preview this particular form. New will allow you to start creating a transaction from a form, but I think it's a much more convoluted way to do it, so I'm not even going to show you. Download and print, of course, if you ever need an external form or a blank form, you can do so as well from here. So let's go back to the left and take a look at the document section. So in particular, the area which is called My Folder. So this is a storage area which allows you to import documents. So again, when I'm talking about documents, these come from outside of web forms, and these documents are not fillable. So that's different with the forms that are already there that you're going to work with within your transactions. Of course, they are fillable online, but every time you import a document within here in the document storage area, these are not fillable. So here you can see I've uploaded different types or formats of documents as well. I have some PDFs here, some docs, which is from Word, of course, and you can also post some images as well. So you can pretty much upload any type of document. There's no limits in terms of the size of the documents as well. And these documents can be just stored here if you want a quick access to them, or attach them to a transaction, or send them by email to your client. So very easy to upload these documents. Is simply click on the plus sign. Again, the plus sign is always around for you to create an action. In this case, it's to add a new document. So I've already created a folder for myself. So I'm just going to add a new document here. So you have different ways to add documents. So the first one, which is the blue box here, which will allow me to look on my desktop files. And the next one here is to import from any one of these third parties. And these are usually the two most popular ways to import a document. And again, you can import here any one of these documents, any sizes, and just leave them there. And once these documents are actually already in your folders, take a look again at this menu option and look at the different things that you can do. You can print, download, rename, a whole bunch of different options that are available to you once these documents are in your folders. Let's go back to the left, and task tool, we're not going to be covering this today. This is being covered in my advanced class. Broker tools, I do have the same level of permission as a broker, but if you are not, then you're simply not going to see it. So the faxing tool here, and I know that a lot of members do not use fax. However, there's still a small percentage of our members that still use it. And it will create a fax back cover sheet that is custom to each and every transaction. I will show you how to disable that feature, however, because you're probably not going to use it. But if you do, then of course you can also download it if that's necessary. So let's go back to the left and take a look at the contact section. This is a section where you can create your own personal contact list. So right here, you again will find that plus sign in order to create that action, create contact. And then you have to choose a type. And the reason why that is a mandatory field is because these actual contact here will help you auto-populate within my form. So if I do have, for example, a new buyer, and I'm just going to call this person here. Of course, you just add as much information as possible. So Mr. John Buyer, and we'll just create an email here. And of course, you add the address or whatever information you add here and save it. And then, of course, it will be located right here. So we're going to come back and work with contacts later on. So let's look into the setup area, which is a very important section to be comfortable with because a lot of tools are also available right from here. So let's take a look under preferences. User and office information. So this is essentially the information that is sent to us from your board. So if you see that some of this information here is out of date, that means it's also out of date at the association. So it's really important that you make these changes with them, and then they will send it to us in the next upload. So that's usually done within the next 24 hours. And under email signature, this allows you to create a signature block that will be added into every email that you send through WebForms. The last tool that we have here, so this is a branding one, which will allow you to customize your email. So you can add a banner at the top, you can add a professional photo or a company logo. So keep in mind that if you add any images here, they will be always appearing with every email that you send. So again, this one is definitely not a mandatory tool, but it's there if you want to actually try it out. So let's go back to the setup menu here. Program settings. So a lot of the global settings here, and again, I'm not going to go through all of them, but take the time to check them out. But I'm going to show you a couple of them. The first one, the transaction settings. So this is where you will find that create cover sheet. So the faxback cover sheet I was talking about, if you want to disable it, normally there will be a check mark in here. Just remove it. And then, of course, make sure to update. The wizard, we are going to be using it today because this is a beginner's class. But eventually, I think most people, once they get comfortable with WebForms, they're probably not going to use it. So this is where you could be able to disable it on a permanent basis. All right, so let's go back down here. And I want to just show you under form settings, because here you can actually choose a font of your choice. So I chose Courier as my default. And again, it's completely up to you. You can also choose a default size. And whenever you make a change, of course, always make sure to update. So that's just ensure consistency that all your transactions will look the same. All right, so let's go back again to the left. Under your app store. So this is where you would be able to link or purchase an electronic signature vendor. So here I am linked to Authentisign because you can see on the left, I have the pen that's showing me that I am linked. So Authentisign is just a little bit different because it's actually integrated in the platform. All of these other vendors here are linked to WebForms. So even though if you already have a contract with either one of them, all you need to do is link, and it will ask you for your credentials. It's usually a really quick operation to just link them. And if you need to purchase either one of these e-vendors, then definitely you need to go onto their website from here. So make sure that you go and click on Learn More, and then check out, of course, their price points, their benefits package, etc. And then I really encourage you to link and purchase from this page. It makes things much easier. And keep in mind that if you are going to send any transactions by electronic signature, it has to be linked in advance from this page. Okay, so let's we'll come back, of course, with e-signature later on. All right, so the last item here is the support page. So a number of tools here available to you here for additional training. At the bottom, we do have our support form, so that will be sent directly into the CREA Member Experience Center, and someone would get back to you. So if you add as much information as possible as to what the issue is, screen captures are always a good idea as well. So, and of course, this will be sent directly to us, and someone will get back to you either by email or by phone. So let's go back to the main dashboard here. So we are going to be looking at creating templates today. So as I said, template is a great tool to help you along in your process. I'm going to tell you why, because when you're creating a transaction, be it a residential listing, a condo sale, a commercial, agricultural, any type of transaction that you do, you have to follow the same amount of steps. So you have to look for forms, you have to go and add in some clauses or conditions. And this process is one that you would have to repeat over and over again. So what a template is a basic package of all these forms and clauses that you put together that can be used over and over again for each and every transaction. So the first thing we're going to do today is create a template. So let's use this option here from the dashboard. And again, we're going to be looking for that plus sign here in order to start creating our first template. So right here, as you see at the top, it says ownership, and there's two options here. So as an individual agent, you can only create personal templates, or you're not even going to see this option. Brokers can actually create both personal and office templates. So the office template will automatically be shared with their agent. So that is a very helpful tool, especially if you have a lot of new agents. They're not always sure which forms need to be used for specific types of transaction. But again, this is dependent if the broker decides to offer these. So, but the personal agent or individual agent will not even see this option. So let's give a name here to our template for today. So I'm just going to put today's date. And obviously my naming convention here makes sense to me, but you will add a name which will be more descriptive. And these are some ideas or some suggestions on what type of a template you should create. Definitely not limited to this small list here, but I'm just going to choose a residential sale as an example. And let's click on save, and then we're going to start building on this template. All right, so we take a look here in the template manager. So we have potentially 5 elements that we can attach to a template. So we can eliminate right away checklist and team sharing, because these are part of the more advanced class. And then let's take a look at the other items. So the contacts area, I normally would not add my contacts because probably 99% of the time that you create a new transaction, it's a different set of contacts. So my concern would be that you would forget to actually change or remove the name of a previous contact. The exception would be if you do a lot of business with the same people, then by all means create their own template. So right here under documents and folders, so you can attach a document, perhaps that you need the same document for every transaction. So let's just grab one for an example. So click on the plus sign. I'm going to add a document. And right here, we're going to take a look within my document storage area that I showed you earlier. And under my folder, so I'm just going to add a product flight. Let's just say I always need to attach this document to every one of my transactions. So I'm going to add it here. All right, so the next item is forms. So forms, of course, is really the whole purpose of creating a template, because this is where we want to save some time. So let's click on the plus sign here. And now we're going to go and look for these forms to add to our template. So you can search by numbers if you know the number. So this one's an easy one here. I got a few of these numbers available as well. So, and every time you want to add a form, just put a check mark and it's going to be added to your basket. So let's just say here, I want to search by keywords. I can select this one here. I also, of course, need some FinTrack forms right here. And let's add this last one here. And when you're creating a template, sometimes you don't need all of the forms, but you want to put them in here for when you actually are maybe under a tight deadline to create a transaction, or you are offsite and you want to quickly be able to create that. So put them in here. I've just chose here a very minimal number of forms just to keep this simple, but you can add as many forms as necessary. And in fact, again, I encourage you to add as many forms as you think you may need in your template. So one question that I get a lot is about FinTrack. So the FinTrack forms, in some cases, you have to send the same form to different people. So what you're going to have to do is select the first one, then just go back in. Find that form again and just add it a second time. So I know it seems a bit tedious, but once it's in the template, then you don't have to go looking for them. So let's take a look here. All right, so we have, let's say, all the forms that we need for transaction. So now that this is in place, we have to think about inserting some clauses. So whatever that form is, in this case here, let's take a look at the residential contract of purchase and sale. And of course, we can start at all of this here needs to be as generic as possible, because we're still building that template. All right, so here's some conditions here that you may want to insert. So let's just go in here. So you have to click in that space where you normally would add these conditions. So let's click here on the clause section. And I'm going to add some of the system clauses here. And I'm just going to add something completely random because I'm not quite sure which one I need. All right, you can also copy the text from any one of these clauses or conditions. So let's just add a couple of them here. And click on OK. So if I run out of space here, then it would simply let me know that I need additional pages. So I only going to add a couple more here. So now we can go ahead and save and exit. So any place that you would need to insert any additional conditions, please do so within the form, the appropriate form. Now let's go back into the template. So we want to still work with the template itself. All right, so let's take a look here. So we have 6 forms. So we have our 2 identical FinTrack forms that we can put together. You can also drag these things into the appropriate position here. So we have all the forms that we need. We inserted some conditions here. Now our template is ready to be used. So let's go back to the dashboard. And let's start creating a transaction out of this template. So let's right here, create transaction. So let's call this transaction And again, the naming convention has to be something that will be easy for you to find. So let's choose a template. So I have an example here of an office template. So if I was a broker, I could offer it right here to my agent. So automatically, if I create them, it will be shared with the agents and you will have access to them right here as well as with your own personal template. So I'm going to choose the one that we just created. And the import data, a really important section here, because of course, this is where we would add the MLS number in order to help with the auto population. So if you don't have that number at the beginning, please make sure not to choose, in this case here, of course, there's only one selection, but if you don't have it, just to leave it at select source. So let me just grab here a current or active MLS number. And you could choose here which role or neither. That's completely up to you. And again, it's always about helping with auto population. And we're going to leave the wizard on because the wizard, as I said at the beginning, is a tool to help you along as you're creating your first transaction. Let's click on create here. All right, so we are looking here, of course, at the beginning of our transaction, where you see previous and next and detail step 1 to 5. This is actually my wizard that's going to guide me throughout the steps. So right here to the right, as I, as I created this new transaction, the menu just appeared here. So this menu will be the specific items particular to this transaction, not to be confused with the menu to the left, which are all the tools. These are all the elements of my transaction. Okay, so the MLS number that I inserted has populated a lot of the information already. So now what I'm going to do is just continue with the steps of the wizard to make things a little bit easier. So the details is kind of a two-part. So by clicking on next, it's going to take me into the transaction date area. So here, of course, as many dates that you can insert, as much information as you can insert at the onset will populate within your transaction. So let's add just a few more dates here. And then we're going to go ahead and click on next to move to step 3 of the wizard. All right, so we have here all the information that was populated with that MLS number. And what I'm going to do here is add a buyer because I don't have a buyer here. So you could, of course, create a new contact if it's a brand new buyer, but I'm going to just use one of my existing one. Select and click on add. And again, this is all about helping with auto population. All right, so all the people that are involved in the transaction are in place. Now let's click on next to move to step 4. And now, of course, we see our form. So remember when we created our template, we added all of these forms here that were specific to this type of transaction. However, from here, I could still make some changes. So let's just say I'm not going to need that counter offer this time. I'm just going to delete it. Okay, so I can move things around as well. I can add more forms. So whatever changes I make to this particular transaction does not affect my template. The template has done its job of giving me the content, and now I can completely adapt it to each new transaction. So from here, if all our forms are in place, then we simply have to click on next. And then we're down to the last step of the wizard, which is the document. So in this case here, yes, I did attach a document. I could decide to delete it if I want to, but I'm not. I'm going to leave it there and then click on done. So this completes the 5 steps of my wizard. And now I'm actually in what we call the transaction dashboard. So this area is also completely adaptable or customizable. Remember the little lock here. So this is again, but this is going to be a little bit different. So I want to see what are the different things that are attached to my transaction itself. So it's not the same as the member dashboard. So I can add perhaps notes. So I'm going to be adding some notes. I can put it down here. So it can be completely different. It's going to take a while to change it. All right, so I'm just going to move this a little bit at the top here so we can see it. Make things a little bit more aesthetically. There we go. And just add them here. So again, this is completely customizable. You may just want to have the details overview here, the forms that you're going to be working with, and the documents if they're attached. So it could be as much or as little as you would like. All right, so once this is done, again, always make sure to just lock it back up. So once you want to start working with your forms, you can simply click in any one of the forms that you need to open. So let's take a look here. We're going to open the agreement or the residential contract of purchase and sale. So let's take a look at some of these options at the top. Under your file menu, so new would allow me to add a new form. So there's different ways to add new forms. In this case here, if I wanted to add one specifically just for this transaction, I can. There's also a save feature, so you can be saved, which is just a regular save. Save as a PDF will create an external document, which is not editable. And then if you ever need to take something offline that you still want to continue editing, then you would use this option here, save as an editable PDF. So of course, make sure that when you take it offline, if you make additional changes to that form, then it becomes your latest copy. You can save it back to WebForms. However, because it's left the application, it's no longer editable if you bring it back, which means it's going to become a document. All right, so let's take a look here. We do have watermarks that you can add, remove print, send options as well. So moving along here, so in terms of font, as you can see here, my default font was CREA Bold. I could change it right here if I want to choose a different one just to see what it looks like. So as long as I don't change my default, it will always go back to the CREA Bold. Same thing for the sizes as well. So clauses, we'll get back to it in a minute. Transaction forms, if I open this up here, it's going to show me all these forms that I have in my transaction. So if I want to go work on the amendment, for example, I can simply click on it. It's going to close and save what's in my transaction and move me to that next form. And moving along here, of course, we do have other options, other tools under markup. So this is a great tool that will allow you to do annotations on your forms, and also it is actually available for documents as well. So if you're wanting to do annotations to your documents, you will see that menu being offered as well. Right next to it is a really important icon, because if you see that pen, that means that your electronic signature vendor is properly linked. If you don't see the pen, it's either because you're not using it, or you have to make sure, again, to go back to the App Store and link it. So add and remove pages are used when you want to add additional clauses within your document. If you have too many of these clauses or conditions, then it will allow you to add a blank page. Or there's also the option of having the auto flow, which the system is going to tell you, you've run out of space, do you want to add another page? So in most cases, of course, you're going to say yes. In this case here, we added only a couple of them, but let's just say we wanted to add an additional blank page. It's simply going to give me another one here with just a little bit more space. So you can see here it added that schedule, which we'll just call it Schedule A. And then, of course, you can go in here and add other clauses. So from here, I'm going to click on clause, and I can add some more personal one. I don't have any yet, so we will be creating those. So let's definitely go to the system clauses, which these ones are provided by your provincial association. So let's just take a look here under chattels, for example. So I'm going to add additional ones here. And you can always go back to different categories as well. And always check the clauses to make sure you have the right conditions added in. And click on OK. And again, as you're adding more and more schedules, if you end up adding too many of these blank forms, please make sure to remove them because it is recalculating the number of pages that you have. So if you're never going to use that additional schedule, please remove it by using this option right here. So again, if you add all of these clauses in advance, when you're building the template, then you don't have to do as much work because they're already in place for you. You can also click in here. Maybe you needed to add an additional personal clauses. You can also type in, of course. So it's completely adaptable to each and every new transaction. So that's the beauty of these templates. And it's always about saving you time. So once all your forms here are complete, then you can simply click on the pen and it will send this form to your electronic signature vendor. So keep in mind, if you use this option, it's only going to send the page that you're looking at right now. If you need to send several forms, then keep in mind that you have to be outside of the editor, which we will be doing right now. All right, so we are back in the transaction dashboard. So we have left the editor, but we're still working on our transaction. So let's go to the form section here. All right, so there's additional changes that I'd like to make here because I have these two FinTrack forms that are going to go to different people. So I'm going to just simply use the menu option, click on rename. And let's just send this to John Smith. So again, this is just to make my life a little bit easier, just to make sure that I'm sending the right form to the right person. And again, this does not affect my template. Again, I can move things around. So now let's send multiple forms to our e-signature provider. So you can pick and choose the forms that you need. There's a select all right here at the top. Select the basket. So once again, the first option that I see here is the pen icon, which tells me that I am linked. And now all of these forms that I selected would automatically be going to, in my case, Authentisign. So that's how easy that is. So as you can see here, there's also other action that you can do. So let's close this back up here. Once again, in order to send or do a multiple action from one to several forms, this is one of the ways to do it. For example, here, if I just want to send John Smith this form, I can select just this, click on the basket, and select the email option. So I'm going to send this to John, but pick, of course, I'm going to send it to me. You can write a note. Of course, you have the option to send as a link or an attachment. So it really is dependent on the size of that document that you're sending. An attachment is fine. In this case, it's just one form. A link would be preferable if you're sending a large amount of forms because it sends them one email with links to all individual forms. So that's what would be recommended if you have a lot of forms. In this case, it's only one attachment. So I can simply choose this one and immediately is sent to the email. All right, so again, you have to be in your open transaction in order to send one or multiple forms. On your screen, when the form is open, you can only send that particular form. Here, it allows you to do it with multiple forms at the same time. And that's how quickly you can create a transaction from the template once that template is in place. That's why it's important to spend the time in creating that template and having all the right forms in place. And of course, some of these conditions that you would normally use, add them to the same template. So another thing I want to show you, since we are on this open transaction here, at the top, another menu option, which is also very important. Again, check out these options. Delete transaction, pretty self-explanatory. This will delete only this particular transaction. If you need to delete multiple, you'll have to go in the transaction area on the left. Team share, of course, part of the advanced class. We're not going to be covering this today. Notes, you can add, duplicate. Keep in mind, if you do a duplicate of a transaction, it's an exact copy of everything that's in that transaction, including all the variables such as the MLS, buyer, seller, etc. So Sometimes it makes sense to do a duplicate, but I do not recommend it. I would prefer that you use a template. A template will never retain anything but the forms and the actual clauses or conditions that you've inserted, okay? So the import data is one of the tools I want to show you. When I said at the beginning that you can add the MLS number after the fact, this is how you're going to do it. So it's essentially the same feature, except that you can add the number after. So we're just going to add a new number in this case, because we already have one. Just going to show you how quick that happens. So automatically populate the forms. Of course, you want to use that because you want to make sure that the data flows throughout all of the forms in your transaction. Let's click on import here. So the warning message here says there are existing listing agents and sellers. Do you want to remove them before importing? I'm going to say no, I'll keep the same ones. So very quickly, I was able to remove all the data and add all the new data from another MLS number. So again, whether you have no number when you're starting or you just for whatever reason need to change the MLS data, this is the way to do it right from here and use the import. The other one I want to show you is the status. So after you start having a lot of transactions, so you may want to just put a status to them. So when you are doing a search on just specific types of transaction, if you want to see which one are all your expired, then you will have that tag attached to that particular transaction. All right, so it just makes things a little bit easier to find them. All right, so now let's take a look under the setup menu. We're going to take a look at how to create personal clauses under the title here. So of course, we're going to open up our personal clause folders. So I've created 3 categories here, just completely randomly. Yours can be just anything you would like. If you don't want to create folders, that's fine as well. You can just have one long list of clauses or conditions. And then, so I'm just going to open up here my residential clause folder. There is still nothing in here. So I'm going to click on the plus sign, add a new clause. And let's just call this our clause for SRA. And I did copy the text here, one of the existing clauses. So I'm just going to copy it back in here. So from here on, I can just completely adapt this clause to what I need. I can delete some text or change it. So here, there's a couple of few tools that you can use to customize this clause. Excuse me. Under insert date, so this is a trigger for personal clauses that would allow me to, at some point, insert a date. So I'm going to add it in here. And I'm going to also add the insert time trigger. So keep in mind that you can actually add the information here that is required until that particular clause is inserted in your transaction. Okay, so right now all I'm doing is adding the programming, and when it's ready to go, and then simply going to be able to add this information. So if we save this here, then that's good to go. You can always go back as well to edit this particular clause by just going back to this menu. So let's go back to our existing transaction. I'm just going to reopen it up into Forms area. So let's just reopen the residential purchase contract. So I am going to go down to this additional page that we added for clauses. So this essentially the schedule that we add here. There we go. So right here, I'm able to go in, and now that I have personal clauses, just put that cursor in here, select the clause menu, check out your personal clauses, and we're going to go to the residential area. So I'm just going to select the one that I just created here. And this is what the triggers will tell you to do. So if you don't choose a date, it will simply add today's date. So just keep that in mind. And same thing with the timestamp, it will just take the ones that's on your computer if you don't change it. And that's what these personal clauses are like. So of course, in a perfect situation, you would create all these conditions or clauses in advance and then add them to your template. And this is where you're going to be saving a lot more time. And this is how you create your personal clauses, again, from your setup menu. So looking back again at the transaction templates, you can access them from here or from the dashboard. So we have the template that we've created today. So we can always go back here and check it out. If we want to make some changes, if we want to add more forms, go in and add more clauses or conditions. So you have to edit it at the template level if you're adding new forms. So keep in mind as well, when your provincial association changes the forms, which they do on a regular basis, you don't have to worry about the most up-to-date form because they will be changed within your template. So you always make sure to have the up-to-date ones, even if it's a template that you've created a while ago. So you don't have to be concerned about that. And of course, if a transaction has been created with that template, the forms will not be changed within that existing transaction. It's only your initial templates. All right, so here, this is kind of the basics of how to make your workflow as efficient as possible. What I would always recommend for agents that are just starting with web forms is to get comfortable working with templates right at the beginning. Create a template, just try a few fake transactions out of it just to see how the process works. And of course, also create the clauses or conditions in advance and add them to these templates. So in final here, just want to make sure that you know how to reach us. If you have any questions following this recording, then you can always reach out to us right here at support@CREA.ca, of course, our toll-free number, or reach out to us by filling out the form right below. And we will either contact you by email or by phone to help you out with your concerns. So thank you so much for joining me today. And this is Lynn Saint Germain with the Canadian Real Estate Association.